All right, let's get started. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining me for another one of our series of webinars here at Data Holdings. We're posting these. If you'd like to go back and look at some of the previous webinars, we're posting these on the dataholdings.com website in the events section, and we'll continue to archive them there. So if you can't attend, you can always, or seeing this one offline, you can always go back and see other ones there. Again, dataholdings.com, and then select the events section. During the webinar, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I'll be sure to answer all of them at the end. I'm a big fan of questions, and we have plenty of time today. Today's a short webinar, so we'll have plenty of time today for any questions. Today's topic is the public cloud, and although there's a lot of new or greenfield applications being built on the public cloud, the majority of Data Holdings customers and people who could enjoy the benefits of Data Holdings are really traditional enterprise, and that's certainly true here in the Midwest. So we want to talk about how the public cloud applies to traditional enterprise. A little bit of intro from me. My name is Ryan Brooks. I'm the VP and General Manager of Data Holdings. We're a public data center here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and we're minority owned. So we were built by the diversification arm of the Potawatomi tribe. And this is the result of their long-term interest in the area. And it really is a wonderful thing to have here in our backyard. I'm a Wisconsin native, and for the tribe to bring this to the area has really been just a wonderful thing for Milwaukee and the state. We're actually celebrating our 10th anniversary and 10 years of uninterrupted service here at Data Holdings. My email's in the lower part of the screen there, so feel free to hit me up via email if you don't want to ask a question here, if you're watching this offline. So thank you. Let's jump in. So when we talk about the public cloud, what I'm really talking about is what was defined by Amazon Web Services and more recently by Microsoft Azure. These are the big tech players that really have defined and now own the majority of public cloud in the world. You have Google Compute as a distant third, but certainly we're seeing a lot of enterprise that have adopted Amazon Web Services or have adopted Microsoft Azure and also use the data center in a traditional sense. We find that that's a very nice hybrid approach, and folks get to enjoy the benefits of both the public cloud and the wonderful data center that I mentioned. So the key value prop of these public cloud providers is that it allows just a huge amount or access to a huge amount of resources, right? So there's a huge amount of services that each one of them offer, and with the turn of a knob, really, or in a programmatic manner, which is a big part of their value prop as well, you can add more services or more resources to your infrastructure. This is a big paradigm shift for the traditional IT shop, right? An IT organization normally would have to go through a budgetary cycle, predict maximum load, and then procure and maintain, and really were responsible for the care and feeding of those servers. So the public cloud brought a lot of benefits to traditional enterprise in that regards. So again, the first real part of public cloud, or the first benefit of public cloud, is really the scalability aspect. No longer does the organization have to buy and support the hardware and hardware lifecycle for the absolute peak load or worst case that an organization has. Now, it doesn't mean that by moving to the public cloud that a legacy application can scale infinitely, but certainly the raw materials to support the organization and its apps are there. What I do want to mention here is that the public cloud is not a magic bullet in this regard. So a lot of the technologies aren't different than what we're used to seeing in the enterprise. So for instance, one thing that we're seeing is that the speed of a thread on a CPU has really not increased over time, or at least it's not increased by orders of magnitude like we used to see. So by moving to the public cloud, you won't get a big uplift in application performance, which means simply by moving to the public cloud, your application doesn't automatically become horizontally scalable as much as we would like it to be the case. And with CPUs sort of topped out or just increasing incrementally year over year, certainly moving into the public cloud does not mean that your organization can all of a sudden have more customers or users or support more revenue at the end of the day. So it does mean, though, that the IT organization that's leveraging the public cloud is making recurring payments to support the infrastructure instead of making a CapEx expenditure for server, hardware, networking, security, and storage. All that goes away, and you're getting a bill from the provider monthly for those services. Another difference that's recognized by IT, and this can be somewhat controversial, is that for some types of failures, the IT organization itself can point to the provider instead of inward, shifting responsibility and having someone else to blame if there's an outage that they suffer. This, I'm not a big fan of this because at the end of the day, the services still have to be up, right? We have to serve our applications, we have to keep our data secure, and just be able to point the finger a different direction doesn't really solve an organization's users or customers' problems. The last point I want to make here is that although the public cloud can and does run enterprise or legacy apps, it's really best suited and actually has defined the modern web-oriented architecture. Applications that are truly borderless, modern, um, follow principles of zero trust, and make organizations really express their business through APIs. So it's a little hard to say if web apps push the public cloud or if the public cloud push web apps, but certainly there's a synergy here. And those type of apps are traditionally pretty different than what we think of as a legacy enterprise application that is running a more typical enterprise architect friendly app. So enterprises will get there, but certainly we've been conservative with our applications in enterprise. So this next slide, that being said, what are some of the trade-offs when you work with a public cloud provider as a typical enterprise? Well, one thing that we've learned from all these big tech companies that customer service is virtually non-existent. The customer is always wrong, particularly when it comes to billing and transparency issues. So during those outages that I spoke of before, you might not actually know why they're having an outage, and they're certainly not, or they don't have a history of being transparent with the root cause. So communication is poor, billing is cryptic and hard to understand. More importantly, I think, truly, is that public cloud services, when you subscribe to them, you don't have any sort of portability between providers. You can't simply take your apps from one provider and move to another. And particularly if you've developed a custom application using some of their higher layer services, you're absolutely locked into that provider. Now, if you're some type of high growth startup, like an early stage Uber or something like that, which I think a lot of us in the Midwest aren't, this might be fine. Essentially, you're trading money and cost for the quickest possible customer acquisition, and you probably don't care about profitability. But the rest of us in enterprise, and certainly in my world, we care about profitability. It's important that the business is sustainable in all regards. So it's important to consider, what you build on top of some of these public cloud features. Can you port it to a different provider if the cost structure changed? And if you can't, then you're truly committing your organization to, an unpredictable bill, and certainly a single source environment where you're not enjoying the benefits of any type of competition that we enjoy from capitalism. So what's reasonable now could certainly change as the providers win in the future. Another one, and this, I'll give you this falls into both the benefit and downfall or negative category, is really billing. So although you pay for what you use, it's extremely variable, and a misclick can cost an organization tens of thousands of dollars or more. And certainly the pricing models of public cloud are built to encourage the organization to move apps and data up into the cloud, certainly not to migrate data out or even make some sort of multi-cloud approach possible. Doing transactions between clouds is nearly impossible, certainly from an economic standpoint. And by design, again, outward data flows are expensive by design in the public cloud. They want to lock you in. So the takeaway here is that these public cloud systems are very complex. They're certainly some of the most complex software that people have ever built. And you're paying for this complexity either in the cost that they incur to build these systems, or in your own cost to understand and use them effectively. And even the recurring cost model, right, is difficult to understand. The learning curve is difficult as well. So what can you do to protect yourself or protect your organization from some of these downfalls of the public cloud? We tried to come up with some guidelines here that I hope you find helpful. So again, although you've eliminated the capital expenditure of hardware procurement, I would encourage you, or we would encourage you, to be sure to allocate resources, have somebody on staff who at least spends part of their time understanding each month's bill and trying to understand and truly project future costs. They should be involved in budgetary planning and understand that the bill can be highly variable. Also, I'd strongly recommend, and I spoke on this just on the last slide, is that try to only use services where you have a work-alike from other providers, meaning there's not a single source solution. So the latest and greatest feature that one cloud provider might have that puts them ahead of someone else might not be something that you want to pursue, because again, you have no way to enjoy the benefits of competition. It's very easy to paint an organization into a proprietary corner, and I think this is by design with some of the public cloud offerings. So make sure that you stay in a competitive environment. Also, equally important, understand the cost to escape your data, and I'll put quotes around escape. So if there's a disaster or some type of strategic change with your business, how can you move your data around? How long will it take to get your data over the internet? And what will it actually cost for you to pull that data down? Again, pricing models are very compelling to move your data up. It might even be free. Move your data out or laterally is probably a whole different story. Data loss has been infrequent in terms of disasters caused by the public cloud providers themselves, although not unheard of, but it's been absolutely rampant when caused by applications and misconfigurations of the public cloud. Just think of how many S3 buckets have been leaked over the years. So storage systems on AWS that have exposed PII, or critical company data has just been out there because people didn't understand all the knobs and configurations that they had to, knobs they had to turn, or configuration choices they had to make in the various interfaces. So being in the cloud does not eliminate those normal rules of certainly backups and security. 3-2-1 rules for backup, following best practices for security. And although you might be able to move the blame for some of these errors to the provider or vendor, at the end of the day, it can still significantly damage your organization. You have to safely and securely store your organization's data. It really is the crown jewels of your organization, and I can't emphasize that enough. Well, just saying someone else is taking care of it is not enough. When you're inside the administrative domain of a public cloud provider, something on their end could just as easily take you out. A misconfiguration, some type of rollback, you could lose data, or there's a data center loss, you haven't correctly configured availability zones, you can lose data. So follow normal backup rules. Make sure you're auditing for security. Another thing to consider, make sure you have folks to manage the risk and complexity of the public cloud. You have to commit resources to this. It's not the old school enterprise architecture. People need training and people need to be supported. They can do the job, but certainly the organization must support them. Just like we have life cycles for hardware and software, sure, but there's life cycles for people and their knowledge sets as well. So our response to these issues with public cloud is really a hybrid approach. So although we embrace public cloud, and there are some very unique, and don't get me wrong, there are huge benefits of public cloud, we have some complementary offerings here that make public cloud even more compelling. For one, we allow co-location, meaning you can bring your own existing equipment to our data center floor and enjoy the benefits of the wonderful uptime that the facility enjoys and the physical security. Public cloud facilities don't offer this. You're not going to be able to bring your old system physically to Azure or AWS or Google Compute. Think, large storage system that you might be using, a big IBM, big hardware, some non-x86 system. You're not going to be putting something physical at Microsoft or Amazon. A differentiating factor here is you can do that at data holdings. So you can privately interconnect, you can bring your systems in, you can privately interconnect these systems to the public cloud. So you have the benefits of, hey, I still have to own this legacy system, or it makes much more budgetary sense to own my storage, put it on the data center floor, enjoy all the characteristics of data holdings, but then also interconnect privately or maybe you're using our highly available internet, or we have every telecommunication carrier you can imagine connected diversely into the centers. Use those to interconnect to the public clouds. You can enjoy a hybrid scenario where you're getting the best of both worlds. And then we have our own local low latency cloud right here in the building. And again, you can interact to this with physical hardware or the public cloud. We have that in Milwaukee, and we also have that remotely in Minneapolis, which is out of region, different power grid. Our public cloud, our private cloud here can ingest and export, importantly, VMware virtual machines, Hyper-V virtual machines, KVM-based virtual machines. We have block level storage, NFS, CIFS/SMB. We have object storage that's compatible and work alike with Amazon S3. All of this is built on non-proprietary open source technologies, but it's built for traditional enterprise applications. So we think we've tried to take the best learnings from public cloud, apply them to something that is local, low latency. But ultimately the theme here is that we'd like to earn and keep your business because we're doing your good job. We don't want to lock you in because of technology choices. We want you to have portability. We want you to stay in a competitive environment. And I hope we're doing that here. So that's a bit of a summary of our local cloud offering. And if you have more questions, my email is on the first slide. I'll repeat it here, rbrooks@dataholdings.com. Hit me up with any questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts on our suitability regarding our products and services I've mentioned. So a logical follow-up question would be, what does this actually cost? The local cloud offering I was just speaking about is actually much less than the big tech cloud players. Because it's a subset of core services that is really built for enterprise apps and not for the next Uber, it costs us less. It has less complexity, which means more uptime and hopefully a better fit for enterprise. The really good news is our pricing is flat from month to month. So there's no ingress and egress charges for data. Again, we want to earn your business and keep it, not lock you in. And there's not going to be surprises on your bill. It's going to be the same bill every month unless you call us and say, hey, I want to expand or contract, or do something through an interface that expands or contracts. But it's not going to be all of a sudden you got very popular and your business is successful, more successful, doing more transactions. Your rate is not going to go up. There won't be surprises on your bill. It'll be straightforward. Our bills are often only a few line items and very easy to understand. I also mentioned colocation. Our colocation service is priced the same or sometimes even lower than lower tier data centers, but it is of the highest quality. We're a tier 3+ data center, which I talked about last month. Again, we're celebrating 10 years of uptime now. Dual power feeds, redundant chillers, redundant UPS, redundant generators. We've done a lot of work to make sure that your servers stay on, cool, and secure. We have a really cool tour video on our homepage where you can learn more about our facility there. The point here is nothing's given up by choosing this local or hybrid approach where you get the best of both worlds and there's no proprietary lock-in. Also, and I think this is important, if you're here at Data Holdings, you end up knowing the people that are supporting your infrastructure. It's a bunch of Midwesterners, and we do care about relationships. We care about the customer. We get to know everybody here, and a relationship will be built. We will share in responsibility for your uptime and security. So a short webinar, but thank you for listening. Let me go off and look for questions. Bear with me for a moment. On the public cloud, do you share servers with other people? And if so, what are the security? Ooh, I like this question. So the thought here is, so we use hypervisors these days to logically partition, one organization's workload from another, but it could be co-located on the same piece of hardware. Yes, there have been what are termed hypervisor escapes, where people have been able to jump between machines on the same host. These have largely been addressed, but in a lot of cases, I think a lot of people, myself included, still feel like there will be continual leaks between guests on a hypervisor. So there are security risks. What we do is, for any significant enterprise load, we built a private vertical cloud where you're on your own hardware. So unless you're just purchasing, onesie twosies virtual machines from us, there are not people co-located on that same piece of hardware. So the guests that are on your same processors, sharing your same cache, sharing the logic and RAM and storage, it's all going to be on your own CPUs, and not just your own socket, but your own actual computer. So I think that's important, because as security is only getting more difficult, it's not getting better. We approach it that yes, there are probably hypervisor escapes that would endanger your company if it's co-located with other machines in the same, or co-located on the same machine. The exception is if it's a onesie twosie VM, that would be a common resource. There have been patches to that over the years. So for example, Amazon uses a lot of Zen, and there's been times when they've gone very quiet and have to make a pretty risky rollout to fix some of these hypervisor escapes. Or if it's some hardware shortcoming in x86, then that could be an issue as well. Another question here is, if I have a tight budget, what would be best for me? So the most common way that people take advantage of data holdings today, well, there's really two. One is a couple small VMs, or a co-location of an entire cabinet. So we provide a cabinet, dual power feeds to every cabinet. You simply bring in your servers and plug them in. And that can get down to even a single rack unit. The smallest of servers can be co-located. And it's a great way to try us out, honestly. See how our operations go, see how we do. And, or if you use a VM, you can see that we're very performant. All of our storage is SSD. So many apps are IO limited these days. So if you bring in a virtual machine and we run it for you, it's going to run as fast as possible. So that's a good way to try us out as well. And those monthly costs can be extremely low. So stop by, you can get a tour. I'd encourage people to check out tours. If you can't stop by, check out our virtual tour on the website. And I think that's it for today. So let me just double check. Yeah, that's it for questions. So thank you for listening to me. I'm sure there will be some more questions. So feel free to hit me an email, just rbrooks@dataholdings.com. And thank you for listening today. Bye-bye.